Hey guys, tonight we are going to court, but we aren't going to argue about a stolen horse, a broken contract, or a dispute over who owns the mill. No, tonight we are diving into one of the most bizarre, surreal, and frankly unbelievable chapters of human history. We are going to the Middle Ages in France, where the legal system was so obsessively thorough that it didn't just prosecute people, it prosecuted anything that moved. We are talking about a world where rats were served with subpoenas, locusts were excommunicated by bishops, and pigs, well, pigs were put on trial for murder. You might think I'm making this up, or that this is some kind of Monty Python sketch. But I promise you, it is 100% historically accurate. You are about to become a defense attorney in a case that is going to test your sanity, your dignity, and your knowledge of Roman law. But be warned, the defendant is likely to eat the evidence if you aren't careful. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop a comment below and let me know. What city are you in right now, and what time is it there? And if you have ever had a moment at work where you thought, I don't get paid enough for this, drop a wage slave emoji in the comments so I know I'm not alone. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Pull your mind away from the warmth of your modern duvet. We are traveling back to the Kingdom of France, specifically to the village of Sévigné in Normandy. In the year 1457. You are not a modern person scrolling on a phone. You are a young lawyer, fresh out of the University of Paris Law School. You are sitting in a cold, damp attic. Outside, the eternal medieval freezing rain is falling. Drumming an irritating rhythm against the moldy wooden window frame, the fireplace in your room is producing more choking black smoke than heat because of the damp wood. You pull your patched wool robe tighter around yourself, and your stomach gives a traitorous growl. Life as a rookie lawyer is not great. You are fluent in Latin, you have memorized the Code of Justinian, and you can argue for 3 days about acquisitive prescription. But the problem is, this hasn't brought you any business. The 100 Years' War just ended. But people are broke. No one hires a lawyer unless they are in real trouble. Just as you are contemplating eating the last stub of your candle for dinner, there is a violent banging on the door. Open up. Court summons. Startled, you straighten your robe and open the door. Standing there is old Jean, the local court bailiff. He is soaked to the bone, holding a parchment scroll wrapped in oilcloth, and wearing a smirk that makes your skin crawl. Congratulations. Motar, Jean sneers before he even steps inside. The court has assigned you a big case. A felony, murder. Your heart skips a beat. A murder case. That usually means a long trial, complex evidence, and most importantly a hefty public defense stipend. You grab the parchment, feeling its weight like it's your next month's rent. Who is the defendant? You ask, breaking the wax seal. Is it the miller, or that blacksmith who is always drunk? Jean's grin widens, revealing a row of jagged yellow teeth. Oh no, no. The defendant is a lady from the village of Sévigné. She is accused of brutally murdering a 5-year-old boy. Your hands tremble. Child murder. That is the gravest of crimes. You unroll the scroll, squinting in the dim light to read the indictment. The Latin is flowery and authoritative. Hereby accused for her cruelty, ferocity, and premeditated malice, causing the victim to suffocate and devouring his limbs. You frown. Devouring limbs. That sounds savage. You scan down, looking for the name. Usually, it would say Marie or Jean. But there, it says Porcus Pig. You freeze. You think you misread it. Or maybe your Latin is rusty. You rub your eyes and read it again. Porcus. A female pig. You look up at Jean sharply. Is this a joke, Jean? You want me to defend a pig? It is no joke. It is procedure. Jean shrugs, leaning against the doorframe to shake the rain off his cloak. The pig was caught red-handed on the Tuesday before Easter. Someone saw her kill the child. By law, she must be tried. And by the principle of fairness, she is entitled to a defense attorney. That's you, lucky guy. You feel dizzy. You studied for 10 years. Mastering Roman law, canon law, and customary law. just to stand in a muddy court in front of a bunch of unwashed peasants trying to prove a pig is innocent. Here we need to insert a mainstream historical fact. The medieval animal trials prox donimo were not rural legends. They were real legal proceedings that occurred mainly between the 13th and 18th centuries in Europe, particularly in France, Switzerland, and Italy. These trials strictly followed legal protocols, with judges, prosecutors, defense attorneys, and even witnesses. This wasn't a farmer's lynching, it was the state machinery working with absolute seriousness. You look at the ridiculous appointment letter in your hand, feeling your career ending before it even started. But why? You ask, why not just kill it and eat it? Why waste time and money on a trial? Jean stops smiling and looks serious, because if you kill it without a trial, that isn't justice, that is just slaughter. Only through a court verdict, confirming its guilt, can its death transform from simple killing into a punishment for evil. It is about restoring the social order that it broke, understand? This touches on an issue that academia is still debating. Historians argue about the deep psychological motives behind these trials. The evolutionist school like E.P. Evans thought this was a remnant of primitive animism. But modern historians like Michel Pastoureau argue the opposite. It was an extreme form of legal rationalism. They were trying to tame nature with the logic of law, forcing the chaotic animal world into human order. Regardless of what the scholars argue, you face a practical problem. Do you take the case, or not? If you refuse, you lose the stipend and might be disbarred for contempt of court. If you accept, you become the town joke, the pig lawyer. You touch your empty stomach, reason quickly conquers dignity. Fine, you sigh, rolling up the parchment. I'll take it, but I need to see my client first. Of course. Jean chuckles like a fox in a henhouse. She is being held in the maximum security prison in St. Pierre. Remember to bring some treats. I hear she has a bad temper. Here is a niche or bazaar. You are standing in front of the heavy Iran-reinforced door of the St. Pierre prison. The rain is still falling, running down the back of your neck in a cold trickle. You knock. A small viewing slat slides open, and a pair of suspicious eyes peer out. I am the counsel for the defense, you announce, trying to sound more confident than you feel. I am here to see the prisoner, Porcus. Double quotes. The door creaks open. The jailer, a burly man named Pierre who smells of onions and damp straw, ushers you in. He doesn't laugh. To him, a prisoner is a prisoner, whether they have 2 legs or 4. As long as the court pays the daily rate for food and lodging, he doesn't care if he's guarding the King of France or a farm animal. You follow him down a dark, torchlit corridor. You pass cells holding thieves, debtors, and drunkards. They shout at you, begging for legal aid or a piece of bread. You ignore them. Your client is in the high-security wing. Pierre stops at a cell at the end of the hall. He unlocks the heavy padlock and swings the door open. 15 minutes. Counselor, he grunts. Watch your fingers. She bites. You step inside. The cell is surprisingly cleaner, at least, as clean as a medieval dungeon can be. There is a pile of fresh straw in the corner. And there, lying in the straw, is your client. She is a large sow, white with black patches, weighing perhaps 200 pounds. She looks up at you with small, intelligent eyes. She grunts. This brings us to a mainstream historical fact. The conditions for animal prisoners were strictly regulated. Records from the 1457 Savigny trial, the very one we are reliving, showed detailed receipts for the pig's incarceration. The jailer charged the court 6 deniers per day for her food. That is the same amount allocated for a human prisoner. She was eating grain, maybe some vegetable scraps, and sleeping on paid-for straw. You pull up a 3-legged stool and sit down. You take out your writing board. This is the moment where reality feels most fragile. You are about to conduct a client interview with a pig, so you begin feeling ridiculous. You are accused of murder. Do you have anything to say for yourself? The pig snuffles and roots around in the straw. She finds a piece of turnip and crunches it loudly. You sigh. I'll take that as a no comment. You look at her closely. You are looking for ... what? A sign of guilt. A glint of malice in her eyes. The prosecution claims she acted with premeditation and malice. A forethought, that is the key legal phrase. If she just acted like a dumb animal, it's an accident. But to be convicted of murder, she must have intended to kill. This leads to a niche academic controversy: the moral agency of animals. Did medieval people really believe animals had souls and free will? Camp A, the literalists, argues. Yes. The Bible says God made a covenant with every living creature, Genesis 9:10. If an animal can obey God, it can also disobey him. Therefore, a pig can choose to be evil. Camp B, the symbolic school, argues, no, they weren't stupid. They knew a pig was just a pig. The trial was a ritual to cleanse the community of the pollution caused by the unnatural act of a beast killing a human. It wasn't about the pig's soul. It was about the village's collective trauma. You lean forward. Listen to me. You whisper to the sow. The witnesses say you ate the boy's face and arms. That is ... bad ... very bad. But if we can prove you were provoked, or that you were just hungry and confused, we might get the charge reduced to manslaughter, or maybe get you off with a warning. The sow looks at you. For a second, you think she understands. Then she turns around and farts loudly. You pinch the bridge of your nose. This is going to be harder than you thought. But then, you notice something else in the cell. Huddled in the shadow behind the massive sow are 6 smaller shapes. The piglets. You check your notes. The indictment mentions them. 6 piglets were found at the scene of the crime. They were found stained with blood. The prosecution is charging them as accomplices. Accessory to murder, you mutter, writing it down. 6 counts. This is the wildest part of the case. In medieval law, guilt could be contagious. If the mother is a murderer, and the children were there, did they help? Did they cheer her on? Or were they just innocent bystanders? You look at the piglets. They are tiny, pink, and squeaking. They look delicious, not dangerous. I can save them, you think. Even if the mother is doomed, surely I can argue that the children were under the influence of a bad parent. Pierre bangs on the door. Time's up, counselor. You stand up. You look at the sow one last time. Don't worry, you say, patting her bristly head and immediately wiping your hand on your robe. I'll think of something. Try to look remorseful in court. You walk out of the cell as Pierre locks the door. He hands you a piece of paper. What's this? The bill. Pierre grins. For the straw and the turnips. The court says the defense has to front the costs and get reimbursed later. You look at the bill. It's more money than you have in your pocket. You are now personally in debt for a pig's dinner. You walk out into the rain, your mind racing. You need a defense strategy. You need a precedent. You need to find a loophole in the law that says a pig cannot be a murderer. You need to go to the library. You need to consult the one man who has been dead for 1,000 years, but still rules the courts of France, Justinian. You are now sitting in the scriptorium of the local Benedictine monastery. It is the only place in the county with a library decent enough to hold the books you need. The room is silent, smelling of beeswax polish and centuries of dust. A monk is snoring softly in the corner, and a mouse, which, for now, is not on trial, scurries across the flagstones. In front of you lies a book that weighs about as much as a small anvil. It is the Corpus Juris Civilis, the body of civil law, compiled by the Roman Emperor Justinian nearly 1,000 years ago. You are looking for a loophole. You open the heavy leather cover. The parchment pages are stiff and crinkled, stained with dampness and the grease of 1,000 fingers that have searched for answers before you. You light a fresh candle, bringing the dense columns of Latin text into focus. You are hunting for the legal status of a pig. This brings us to a mainstream historical fact: the revival of Roman law in the 15th century. French law was a chaotic mix of local customs, Germanic Frankish traditions, and Roman law, the sophisticated code of the ancient empire. Lawyers like you were obsessed with Roman law because it was seen as written reason. It was the gold standard. If you could find a quote in Justinian that supported your case, you could shut down any argument from a local magistrate. You run your finger down the index. Homicidium, homicide. No, that applies to humans. Damnum in neria, Datum, wrongful damage to property. Maybe. You flip to the section on Lex Aquilia. This is the Roman statute that covers damage to property. Here is the logic. If a slave kills a cow, the master of the slave pays for the cow. If a cow kills a slave, the owner of the cow pays for the slave. In Roman law, your client, the pig, is not a who. She is a what. She is property. She is a walking, winking toaster. If a toaster burns your house down, you don't put the toaster in jail. You sue the manufacturer. So, logically, you should be defending the owner of the pig, not the pig itself. The owner should be paying a fine, and the pig should be, well, bacon. But here you are, preparing a defense for the pig itself. Why? You rub your tired eyes. The medieval legal mind has done something strange. It has mixed the Roman concept of property with the biblical concept of sin. You turn the pages to your notes on Exodus 21:28. If an ox scores a man or a woman to death, the ox shall surely be stoned, and its flesh shall not be eaten. This is the root of the problem. The Bible treats the animal as guilty. It demands execution, stoning, not just compensation. The animal has become a moral agent. It has blood guilt. This leads to a niche, slightly headache. Inducing legal concept, noxal surrender, noxi deditio. In Roman law, if an animal caused damage, the owner had a choice: pay the full cost of the damage, or surrender the animal to the victim. It was a way to limit liability. Here, take the cow. I am not paying for the broken fence. But in your case, the damage is a dead child. You can pay for a life, so the court is skipping the pay part and going straight to the surrender the animal to the executioner. Part you slam your fist on the table, startling the sleeping monk. It doesn't make sense. You whisper, shout, to be a murderer, you need intent. This is the core of your defense strategy. Mens rea guilty mind. For a crime to occur, there must be an actus reus guilty act and a mens rea. The pig definitely did the act. There were witnesses. But did the pig mean to do it? Did she wake up that morning and plot the demise of the child? Or was she just a hungry animal acting on instinct? You dip your quill into the inkwell. You start drafting your argument. My client, you write, is devoid of reason ratio and understanding intellectus. She cannot distinguish between good and evil. She operates solely on the appetite of the belly. Therefore, she cannot form the malice required for murder. It sounds good. It sounds logical. But then you remember the prosecutor. He is a sharp, vicious man named Philippipe. Philippipe is going to argue that animals do have memory and intent. He will say, does a dog not know when it has done wrong? Does it not cower when its master raises a stick? If it can fear punishment, it knows guilt. This brings us to a massive academic controversy. The rationality of beasts debate. Medieval theologians and philosophers were split on this. Camp A, the Thomists, followers of Thomas Aquinas, argued that animals were purely instinctual machines. They had no immortal soul, no reason, and therefore could not sin. Trying a pig was blasphemy because it elevated a beast to the level of a man. Camp B, the folk legal tradition, argued that animals were part of the moral community. If a rooster crows at the wrong time, it is an agent of the devil. If a pig kills, it has been corrupted by Satan. Therefore, it must be punished to exorcise the evil from the community. You are stuck between Aquinas and the devil. You look at the mold growing on the corner of the page. It looks like a map of a hostile country. You need a precedent. You need a case where an animal got off. You dig through a stack of loose scrolls, records of previous trials. 1314, Moise Cramail, a bull escaped and gored a man. Guilty, hanged 1386. Falaise, a sow bit the face of a child. Guilty. The judge ordered the sow to be dressed in a waistcoat and breeches, then dragged through the streets and hanged. 1405, Dijon, an ox killed a herder. Guilty, beheaded, your heart sinks. The conviction rate for animals is nearly 100%. The system is rigged. The court needs a hanging to satisfy the grieving family and the angry village. The pig is a scapegoat, but then you find something. A crumpled note about a case involving rats. It's a different jurisdiction, ecclesiastical court, but the logic is fascinating. A lawyer named Bartholomew Chacinus, who will become famous later, but let us pretend his early arguments are circulating now, defended a group of rats who ate the local barley crop. He didn't argue they were innocent. He argued on procedure. He claimed the rats didn't show up to court because the summons wasn't delivered properly. And then he argued they could come to court because the local cats were mortal enemies, waiting to ambush them on the road. He argued force majeure. You stare at the page. The cats, you whisper. The rats were afraid of the cat. Model Section 4, you are standing in the prison cell again. The straw smells worse than yesterday, and the Porcus, as the indictment calls her, is currently trying to eat your shoe. But you are not alone. With you is old Jean, the bailiff, and a very confused tailor named Gaspard. You want me to do what? Gaspard asks, holding a tape measure, as if it were a poisonous snake. I need you to fit her, you say, pointing at the pig, for a waistcoat, and breeches and gloves. This brings us to one of the most surreal visual realities of the medieval animal trial, the anthropomorphic dressing. It wasn't enough to just try the animal. The court often required the animal to be treated as a person, in the visual sense. In the famous 1386 trial in Falaise, the pig was dressed in a waistcoat, breeches, and gloves before being executed. The logic was twisted. If you treat the animal like a human, it validates the idea that the animal can be punished like a human. It creates a visual symmetry. I am not putting pants on a pig, Gaspard says flatly. The court is paying, Gaspard. You remind him. Double your usual rate. Gaspard sighs. He steps forward cautiously. The pig grunts and swings her heavy head. Gaspard jumps back. She is too fat. Her, waistline is enormous. I don't have enough velvet. Use canvas, you suggest. Paint it to look like velvet. It is for the courtroom, not a ball. While Gaspard struggles to measure the inseam of a pig's hind leg. A sentence I never thought You sit on the stool and review your notes on the rat trial again. The lawyer in that case, Bartholomew Chacinus, was a genius of delay tactics. When the rats didn't show up for the first hearing, he argued that the summons had been too general. Rats could mean any rat. Which rats? The court had to issue a new summons to the rats of the Diocese of Autun. When they still didn't show, he argued that the rats were spread out in many villages, and the notice hadn't reached them all. He demanded the summons be read from the pulpit of every single church in the region. This bought the rats months of time. You look at your pig. She is already in custody. You can argue she didn't get the summons, but you can argue about jurisdiction. This leads to a mainstream historical fact. The Middle Ages was a jurisdictional nightmare. There was no single state. There was the king's court, the lord's court seigneurial, and the church court ecclesiastical. They hated each other. They fought over everything, especially fines and confiscations. If a pig kills a child on church land, but the pig is owned by a serf of the local lord, who gets to try her, and more importantly, who gets to keep the bacon, or the fine, afterwards. You turn to Jean. Where exactly did the crime happen? Near the river, Jean says, watching Gaspard try to wrestle a white shirt over the pig's head, on the edge of the abbot's vineyard. The abbot's vineyard, you smile. Are you sure it wasn't on the Duke's road next to the vineyard? It was close. Why? Because, you say, tapping your nose. If it happened on the Duke's road, this is a secular crime. If it happened in the vineyard, it might be an ecclesiastical matter. The church courts are notoriously softer on blood crimes. They can spill blood. They might just excommunicate her. Excommunication for a pig? Yes, it happened. Bishops would write solemn letters, cursing locusts, slugs, and weevils, ordering them to leave the fields under pain of anathema. If you can get the case moved to the church court, the worst they can do is tell the pig she can take communion, which, frankly, she wasn't planning on doing anyway. It saves her life. Jean, you say, I need you to go measure the distance from the road to the crime scene. If it is within 10 feet, I am filing a motion to dismiss based on improper venue. Jean rolls his eyes. You are grasping at straws. Counselor, the Duke wants this trial. The Duke wants a hanging. He is not going to let the bishop steal his show. Gaspard stands up, wiping sweat and mud from his forehead. The pig is now wearing a crude white shirt and a pair of brown canvas breeches that have been modified to accommodate her trotters. She looks ridiculous. She looks like a hairy, angry toddler who has aged terribly. She looks dignified. You lie. She looks like my mother-in-law. Gaspard mutters. You hand Gaspard a coin. Good work, now. The gloves. Gloves. White gloves. To signify her hands are, well, her hooves are clean until proven guilty. This is the theater of the law. You are dressing a beast in the symbols of civilization to prove that civilization works. It is absurd, but it is necessary. Suddenly, the door bangs open. It is the prosecutor, Philippe. He is a tall, thin man who looks like he sharpens his nose every morning. He sees the pig in pants and sneers. Cute, Philippe says. Trying to humanize the monster. It won. Work. I have 3 witnesses who saw her hands covered in blood. No glove will hide that. We shall see, Philippe, you retort. And I have a motion regarding the piglets. They are minors. I want them tried separately. Philippe laughs. They are accomplices. They ate the blood. They are corrupted. They were hungry, you shout back. They are babies. Would you hang a baby for drinking milk, if the milk was blood? Yes, the pig, sensing the tension, or perhaps just annoyed by the pants, lets out a deafening squeal and charges at Philippe. Philippe shrieks and jumps onto the stool. The pig rams the stool. Philippe wobbles. Control your client, he screams. She is just objecting. You yell, grabbing the pig by her new canvas breeches. You drag the pig back. Philippe flees the cell, shouting threats about contempt of court. You sit down, breathing hard. The pig looks at you. She seems satisfied. You pat her head. Good girl. But save that energy for the judge. You have the outfit. You have the jurisdiction argument. You have the orphan angle for the piglets. It is a flimsy raft, but it is all you have to sail into the storm of the courtroom tomorrow. As you leave the prison, the rain, you are standing in the middle of the village hall of Savigny. It is usually a place for grain markets or weddings, but today it has been transformed into a high court of justice. The air is thick, hot, and smells of wet wool, garlic, and the collective excitement of 500 peasants. Everyone is here. The miller, the baker, the priest, the drunk blacksmith. They have all crammed into the hall, jostling for a view. Why? Because this is the best entertainment they have had since the last traveling juggler died of the plague. You stand at the bar, Lebert, the wooden railing that separates the court officials from the rabble. To your right stands Philippe, the prosecutor, looking smug in his black robes. High above you, sitting on a raised dais draped in red velvet, is the judge, Master Filliard. He is wearing a massive powdered wig, or the medieval equivalent, a heavy hood, and looking down at the world with the exhaustion of a man who has judged too many property disputes. And to your left, inside a specially constructed wooden pen, is your client. The so is wearing the white shirt and brown canvas breeches. The shirt is already stained with slobber. The breeches are tight around her hams. She looks ridiculous. She looks like a nightmare from a fever dream. But nobody is laughing. This brings us to a mainstream historical fact, the solemnity of the absurd. You might expect the crowd to be jeering or throwing rotten vegetables, but historical records show that these trials were conducted with deadly seriousness. The clerk is dipping his quill. The bailiff is banging his staff for silence. The judge is adjusting his spectacles. They are treating this pig exactly as they would treat a human murderer. To laugh would be to break the spell of the law. If you laugh, you admit this is crazy. If you stay serious, you affirm that justice is universal. Bring the accused to the bar, Judge Filliard commands, his voice booming. Old Jean unlocks the pen. He tugs on a rope tied around the pig's neck. The pig resists. She digs her hooves into the floorboards. She squeals, a high, piercing sound that makes the front row cover their ears. Jean drags her forward. Her canvas breeches make a swishing sound. She stands next to you. She reaches snout hate to your hip. You try to look dignified. You try to look like a man of science and law, not a man standing next to a farm animal in pants. You place a hand on your stack of parchment. The court is in session. The clerk intones. Case number 457. The Crown versus Porcus of Savigny. Philippe steps forward. He bows to the judge. My lord, he begins, his voice dripping with theatrical outrage. We are here to judge a crime so heinous, so unnatural that it cries out to heaven for vengeance. This beast, this monster in our midst, did willfully and maliciously attack a child of God. The crowd murmurs. Monster, they whisper. Devil. Philippe points a long, bony finger at the pig. Look at her. Does she show remorse? No. She stands there, fattened on the blood of the innocent. The pig chooses this exact moment to let out a loud, wet burp. The crowd gasps. Philippe looks triumphant. See, she mocks this court. You realize you have to intervene before he turns the burp into a confession. Objection, my lord, you shout. My client is suffering from indigestion. It is a physical reaction, not a moral statement. Indigestion is not contempt of court. Judge Filliard looks at you over his nose. Sustained, but tell your client to control her bodily functions. This is a court of law, not a barn. I will try, my lord, you say, sweating. This leads to a niche atmospheric detail, the sight of the beast. In medieval legal theory, seeing the accused was vital. Physiognomy, judging character by face, was considered science. The judge is staring at the pig's face. He is looking for signs of depravity. Does the pig have a criminal brow? Are her eyes shifty? You see the judge making notes. He thinks the pig looks guilty. Why? Because she looks like a pig. And in the medieval hierarchy of animals, the pig is often associated with gluttony and filth. She is guilty by biology. Call the first witness, the judge orders. The doors open. A woman is helped into the witness box. She is weeping. It is the mother of the victim. The room goes deadly silent. The entertainment factor vanishes. This is the tragedy at the heart of the farce. A child is dead. You feel a knot in your stomach. This is the hard part. You have to cross-examine a grieving mother to save a pig. Do you swear to tell the truth by the Holy Gospels? The clerk asks. I swear, she sobs. Philippe steps up gently. Tell us what you saw, madame. I left the baby in the cradle, she stammers. I went to the well, I heard a scream, I ran back, and I saw her. She points a shaking finger at your client. She was inside the house. She had, oh God. She breaks down. The crowd is getting angry. You can feel the shift. They want blood. The pig, oblivious to the emotional temperature of the room, starts chewing on the wooden railing of the dock. Crunch, crunch, she killed him, the mother screams, and the little ones, the 6 little devils, they were watching. They were waiting for their turn. This is it. the 6 piglets, Philippe turns to the jury. Yes, there were often local assessors or jurors. You hear that? It was a gang, a conspiracy. The mother led, and the children followed. They are a criminal enterprise. You stand up. You have to break this narrative. Madame, you ask gently. You say the piglets were waiting. Did you see them bite the child? The mother wipes her eyes. But they were covered in blood. Blood is not action, you argue. If I stand in the rain, I get wet. That does not mean I summon the clouds. Were they eating, or were they just there? They were there. They were there. So you turn to the judge. Mere presence at a crime scene does not constitute guilt. Actus reus requires an act. Standing still is not a crime, even for a pig. The judge strokes his chin. An interesting point, counselor. But what of the mother? She was definitely eating. We do not dispute the eating, my lord, you say, threading the needle. We dispute the murder. Was the child already dead? Did the pig find a body and act on its scavenging instinct? Or did the pig kill the living child? There is a difference between murder and improper disposal of a corpse. The crowd boos, lawyer tricks. Someone shouts. You ignore them. You are fighting for inches. But then the door bangs open again. A new witness walks in. It is a neighbor, a man named Thomas, and he looks like he has a grudge. I saw it all. Thomas shouts before he is even sworn in. That pig has always been evil. Last week, you are clutching the wooden railing of the defense bar so hard you think you might leave fingerprints in the oak. The courtroom has descended into chaos. Thomas, the neighbor with the grudge and the bad teeth, is pointing a finger at your client, who is currently trying to scratch an itch on her flank against the prisoner. Doc. She is a witch, Thomas screams, spittle flying. Or at least, she is possessed. Last Tuesday, I saw her walking backwards. Backwards, I tell you. Only the devil walks backwards to mock the procession. The crowd gasps, walking backwards. That is serious. You stand up. Objection. My client was likely just backing up to turn around. Because she is a pig, and pigs are not known for their graceful pirouettes. Judge Filliard looks down from his high perch. The witness will stick to the facts. But the court notes the unnatural gait. This brings us to a mainstream historical fact, the importance of fama reputation. In medieval law, evidence was important, but fama, public reputation, was often decisive. If the whole village believed you were a bad person or a bad pig, that public rumor counted as legal proof. The logic was, the community cannot be wrong. You aren't just fighting the facts of the murder, you are fighting the gossip of the last 3 years. Thomas is destroying the pig's character. He is painting a picture of a serial offender, a delinquent sow who has terrorized the neighborhood. Tell us about the Friday incident. Philippe, the prosecutor, prompts, looking like a cat who just cornered a mouse. Thomas nods vigorously. It was during Lent, the holy season. Everyone knows we must not eat meat. But I saw her. He points accusingly at the pig. I saw her eating a dead rat, meat, on a Friday, in the middle of Lent. The crowd roars with outrage. Heretic, blasphemer, you rub your temples. This is the religious nonconformity trap. Animals were expected to observe the Sabbath and religious holidays. There are records of roosters being put on trial for laying eggs. Well, they were thought to be roosters, actually basilisks or crows for stealing communion wafers. If the pig broke the fast, she is just a murderer. She is a bad Christian. Thomas, you say, stepping forward for cross-examination. You say she ate a rat on a Friday. Did you check a calendar? Was it perhaps Thursday night? It was Friday morning? And tell me, Thomas, you lower your voice. Do you own a pig? Thomas blinks. I did, until last month. And what happened to your pig? It died. Of the flux. And who owns the boar that fathered my client's piglets? Thomas hesitates. Jehan, the owner of the accused? Ah, you smile. So, Jehan's pig had piglets, and your pig died. And Jehan refused to lend you his boar last year, didn't he? That has nothing to do with this, Thomas shouts, his face turning red. This leads to a massive academic controversy, the proxy war theory. Why did villagers go to the trouble of putting animals on trial? Campa, the anthropologists, argues it was about the animal. Camp B, the sociologists, argues it was about the humans. They suggest that animal trials were often proxy wars between neighbors. If I hate you, but I can sue you, I sue your pig. If I can get your pig executed, I hurt you financially. You lose the bacon, and socially, you are the guy who owned the murder. Pig, the trial acts as a pressure release valve for village tensions. You aren't defending a pig, you are defending the owner, Jehan, against the envy of his neighbor, Thomas. My lord, you address the judge. This witness is biased. He is jealous of my client's fertility. He is projecting his own misfortunes onto a farm animal. The judge waves his hand. We will take note of the rivalry. But the charge of eating meat on Friday remains. It shows a lack of moral discipline. She is a pig, my lord. You cry out? She has no calendar. She has no calendar. She has no concept of Lent. To her, a rat is just lunch. Then she is a beast of gluttony, the judge snaps. And gluttony is a deadly sin. Continue. You sit down defeated. You can win on theology. You have to win on forensics. Philippe calls his next witness. I call the town barber. The barber walks in. In the Middle Ages, the barber is also the surgeon. He is the closest thing this village has to a CSI unit. He is carrying a terrifying array of knives and saws, which he lays out on the witness railing. Master Surgeon, Philippe asks, did you examine the body of the child? I did, the barber nods solemnly. And in your expert opinion, what was the cause of death? Severe trauma, the barber says, picking up a rusty saw for emphasis. The bites were distinct. They matched the dentition of a Suscrofa domesticus. And, Philippe leans in, was the child dead before the bites, or did the bites cause the death? This is the million-franc question. If the child died of natural causes like SIDS or a fall, and the pig just ate the body, it is desecration, not murder. The barber strokes his chin. The wounds showed vital reaction. There was bruising. This implies the heart was beating when the teeth made contact. The courtroom gasps again. This is bad. This is forensic evidence. This brings us to a niche, weird historical fact, medieval forensics. We tend to think of medieval trials as pure superstition, but they actually relied heavily on expert testimony. Doctors, midwives, and barbers were frequently called to examine bodies. They checked for cruentation, the belief that a corpse would bleed if the murderer touched it, but they also looked for bruising, swelling, and fluid in the lungs. You are standing before the crate of piglets. They are piling on top of each other, squealing in that high-pitched, chaotic frequency that usually signals either extreme terror or extreme hunger. To the jury, a collection of serious-looking farmers and merchants. They look like livestock. But to you, they are the most adorable alibi in legal history. My lord, you begin, gesturing to the crate with a sweep of your robed arm. The prosecution would have you believe that these infants are a criminal gang, a syndicate of killers. Philippe, the prosecutor, snorts derisively. They were found at the scene. They were covered in blood. In the eyes of the law, an accomplice present at the murder is as guilty as the hand that held the knife, or in this case, the snout. But did they participate? You counter? Or were they simply dining? If a child finds a pie cooling on a windowsill and eats it, is he a thief, or is he just a child? This brings us to a mainstream historical fact. the acquittal of the piglets, in the actual 1457 trial of the Savigny-Sceaux. Yes, the one we are reliving. The 6 piglets were indeed charged as accomplices. However, they were eventually acquitted. Why? Because the court found that while their presence was proven, their active participation in the killing was not. The law made a distinction between eating the victim after death, scavenging, and causing the death. It is a rare moment of sanity in a deeply insane process. The medieval court was willing to hang the mother, but they drew the line at executing the babies, without proof of a bite mark. You turn to the barber surgeon, who is still polishing his saw. Master surgeon, look at their teeth. Are they developed enough to crush a human windpipe? The barber sighs, clearly annoyed that he has to inspect 6 more pigs. He reaches into the crate, grabs a piglet by the scruff, and pries open its mouth. The piglet screams like a banshee. Milk teeth, the barber announces, sharp, yes, but small. They could nip, they could scratch, but kill, unlikely. Unless they swarmed like piranhas. Like piranhas, Philippe shouts triumphantly. Exactly. A swarm of evil. They are 3 weeks old. You shout back. They follow their mother. If she walks into a church, they follow. If she walks into a mud pit, they follow. If she walks into a crime scene, they follow. They lack free will because they lack independence. This leads to a niche, fascinating legal concept: corruption of blood. In medieval human law, if a nobleman committed treason, his entire family could be punished. His blood was considered corrupted. His children lost their inheritance. Philippe is trying to apply this logic to the pigs. He is arguing that the evil nature of the mother has biologically tainted the piglets. They are born bad. You are arguing for individual responsibility. You are essentially arguing that a piglet is a tabula rasa blank slate. The judge looks down at the piglets. One of them has managed to stick its snout through the bars of the crate and is licking the floorboards. They do seem dim-witted, the judge admits. Hardly the masterminds of a conspiracy. But then a new problem arises, a problem of economics. The judge turns to the back of the room. Master Jehan, you are the owner of these beasts. Stand forth. Jehan, a nervous peasant twisting his cap in his hands, steps forward. If the court acquits the piglets, the judge says, they are returned to you. But know this, they are the children of a murderess. Their reputation is stained. Do you want them back? Jehan looks at the piglets. Then he looks at the angry villagers who are muttering about devil pigs. He does the math. If he takes them back, his neighbors might burn his barn. No one will buy pork from the killer bloodline. No, my lord, Jehan stammers. I reject them. I abandon them to the court. They are bad luck. This brings us to a massive academic controversy, the economic mercy debate. Why were piglets often acquitted in these trials? Campa, the humanitarians, argues that the judges genuinely felt pity for the young animals. It shows a sophisticated understanding of juvenile innocence. Camp B, the cynics, argues it was purely about money. The local lord, the Duke of Burgundy in this region, had the right to confiscate the property of felons. If the piglets were executed, they were wasted meat. If they were acquitted, but abandoned by the owner, they became the property of the lord. Camp B suggests that the judges let the piglets live so they could be confiscated and eaten by the court officials later. Or sold for profit. The acquittal was just a way to transfer assets from the peasant to the state. I see, the judge says, a glint of greed appearing in his eye. So, if they are innocent, they become wards of the court. Exactly, my lord, you interject, seeing an opening. If you execute them, you get nothing but 6 tiny carcasses that no one wants to bury. If you acquit them, well, they are fine, healthy animals. They could serve the lady of the manor as pets or provisions. You hate yourself for saying it. You are essentially bargaining their lives by offering them up as future bacon. But it is better than the gallows. Philippe realizes he is losing the accessory argument. He pivots. Fine, spare the little ones, if you must. But the mother, the sow, she is the architect of this tragedy. We must prove her intent. The judge nods. The piglets are set aside for now. We return to the mother council. You claimed earlier that she lacked the capacity for malice. Prove it. The room goes quiet. The piglets are wheeled away, their squealing fading down the hall. Now it is just you and the big sow. She is leaning against the railing, looking bored. She has ripped the seam of her canvas breeches, revealing a very unlegal patch of pink skin. You take a deep breath. This is the main event. You have to prove that an animal cannot think. But to do that, you have to fight against centuries of folklore that says animals are smart, vengeful, and conscious. You walk to the center of the floor. You look at the judge, my lord. You say, to condemn a being for murder, you must prove they have a soul, for only a soul can sin. And if you claim this pig has a soul, then I demand you baptize her before you hang her. The crowd gasps. Baptize a pig? Someone shouts. Blasphemy, is it? You shout back. If she is human, the silence in the courtroom is shattered by the sound of a heavy wooden rosary hitting the table. Father Martin, the village priest, has stood up. He is red-faced, shaking with holy indignation, and looking at you as if you are the one who should be in the dock. Baptize a sow. Father Martin sputters. You mock the sacraments, counselor. This beast is unclean. It has no capacity for grace. Exactly, you shout, spinning around to face the jury. And if it has no capacity for grace, it has no capacity for sin. You cannot have a murderer without a sinner. If she is just a biological machine made of bacon and bad temper, then this is not a trial. It is a waste of firewood. You feel a surge of adrenaline. You have them cornered in a logical paradox. But then, a new voice cuts through the noise. It is a smooth, oily voice coming from the back of the room. If there is a question of the soul, the voice says, then this is a matter for the ecclesiastical court. A man in fine purple robes steps forward. It is the bishop's vice official. Your heart sinks. You wanted to use the church as a shield, but you may have just summoned a different kind of predator. This brings us to a mainstream historical fact, the great jurisdictional divide. In medieval animal trials, there was a strict division of labor based on, well, catchability. Secular courts, the state lord tried domestic animals. Pigs, cows, horses. Why? Because you can arrest a cow. You can put handcuffs or ropes on a pig. The state controls physical bodies, so it punishes physical bodies. Ecclesiastical courts. The church tried pests and vermin rats, locusts, weevils. Why? Because you can't arrest 1,000,000 locusts. The state is powerless against a swarm. So, the church steps in with spiritual weapons, exorcism, and anathema. You have just blurred the line. By arguing about the pig's soul, you have invited the church to claim jurisdiction over a domestic animal. The bishop claims this pig, the vice official announces. If she is possessed by a demon, she must be purified by the church, not hanged by the duke. Philippe the prosecutor turns purple. She is the duke's prisoner. She ate a subject of the crown. The fine belongs to the state. The soul belongs to God. The vice official retorts. The bacon belongs to the jailer. Old Jean shouts from the side, worried about his reimbursement. The courtroom dissolves into a three-way shouting match between the state, the church, and the jailer. The pig, bored by the theological debate, has decided to lie down and take a nap, resting her head on your foot. This leads to a niche, bizarre legal reality, the benefit of clergy for animals. In human trials, if you could read Latin, you could claim benefit of clergy and be tried by the church, which didn't use the death penalty. You briefly wonder if you can teach the pig to read a Bible verse. You look at her. She is currently drooling on your shoe. No, that strategy is out. The judge bangs his gavel. Silence. This court will not surrender its jurisdiction. The crime was physical blood, not spiritual heresy. We proceed under the custom of Normandy. The church official huffs and sits down, looking like a vulture denied a meal. You have lost the church loophole. The pig will be tried by the state, which means the death penalty is back on the table. You have one last card to play. The lack of malice argument. My lord, you say, trying to regain control. Let us forget the soul for a moment. Let us talk about instinct. A wolf kills because it is a wolf. A pig eats because it is a pig. Where is the premeditation? Did she buy a weapon? Did she lie in wait? Philippe smirks. She waited until the mother was at the well. That is calculation. That is ambush. That is ambush. That is opportunity. You argue. If I leave a pie on the window and a bird steals it, is the bird a thief, or am I a negligent baker? You turn to the mother of the victim. Madame, I ask you with deep respect. Why was the child alone? Why was the door open? The room goes cold. Blaming the victim or the victim's family is a dangerous game. I thought he was safe, the mother whispers. Safe? You gesture to the pig. In a village full of loose animals? We live in mud, we sleep with cows, we let pigs roam the streets to eat our garbage. We created this environment. This pig is the unpaid street cleaner of Savigny. She was doing the job we gave her, scavenging. And now we want to kill her for being too good at it. This brings us to a massive academic controversy. The scapegoat theory. Why did these trials peak in the late Middle Ages? Campe, the anthropologists like Ren Girard, argues that these trials were a sacrificial ritual. When a community experiences a trauma like a child's death, social tension rises. To prevent villagers from killing each other, vendettas, they project all their anger onto a scapegoat. The pig must die to restore peace. It doesn't matter if she is guilty. It matters that she is punished. Campe, the legal historians, argues it was about deterrence. They believed other pigs would see the hanging and learn a lesson. Yes, they really believed this. We will get to the public viewing aspect later. You look at the faces in the crowd. They are angry. They don't want logic. They want a sacrifice. They want to see something swing so they can feel safe again. You realize you aren't fighting a legal case. You are fighting a ritual. Counselor, the judge interrupts, looking at the hourglass on his desk. Your arguments on instinct are noted. But the law is clear. Qui facet per alium facet per se wait. No, that is for agency. The law states, if a beast kills, the beast dies. Do you have any legal reason why this sentence should not be passed? Not theological, not philosophical, legal. You scramble through your notes. You look at the pig. She has woken up. She is looking at the judge. And then she does something incredible. She screams. Not a grunt, a long, high-pitched, terrifying squeal that sounds exactly like a human scream. The judge jumps. The crowd recoils. She speaks. A peasant shouts. It is the voice of a demon. No, you shout, grabbing the pig's ear to calm her. She feels like warm leather bristles. She is pleading. She is begging for mercy. Listen to the fear in her voice. Can a machine fear? Can a stone fear? She fears death. Therefore, she loves life. Therefore, she has a value beyond her meat. It is a desperate, emotional appeal. You are trying to humanize a pork chop. Philippe stands up, adjusting his sleeves. She screams because she is guilty. The devil screams when he sees the cross. The pig screams when she sees the judge. The judge nods. He has heard enough. The court has heard the arguments, he announces. The defense claims lack of intent. The prosecution claims malice aforethought. We will retire to consider the verdict. But my lord, you interject, playing for time. The, cost of the trial? We haven't discussed the budget. The judge pauses. Budget, yes, if you hang her, you lower your voice. Who pays the executioner? He has to come all the way from Paris. The sun has touched the bell tower. The heavy oak doors of the village hall swing open once again. The air inside has not improved. In fact, the smell of 500 sweating bodies mixed with the scent of a nervous pig has created a unique atmosphere that can only be described as eau justice. You stand back at the bar. Your throat is dry, your robe is damp with sweat, and your client, Porcus, has decided that the most comfortable place in the room is sitting directly on your left foot. You don't move. If she screams again, you lose. Judge Filiart returns to the dais. He looks tired. He looks like a man who has spent the last hour arguing about the price of rope. The court will hear final arguments regarding the issue of intent, the judge announces. This is it. The core of the case. You can admit the pig killed the child. You can admit it was tragic. But to hang her, they must prove she wanted to do it. Philippe, the prosecutor, steps forward. He looks fresh, revitalized. He has clearly had a snack during the recess. My lord, Philippe begins, pacing back and forth like a metronome. My learned friend, the defense counsel, speaks of instinct. He paints this beast as a mindless eating machine. But the facts suggest otherwise. Philippe turns to the jury. The pig did not attack in the open street. She waited. She hid behind a hedge near the well. She waited until the mother's back was turned. This was not a chance encounter. This was an ambush. And ambush requires planning. He slams his hand on the railing. Does a stone plan? Does a river plan? No. Only a rational mind plans. And if she can plan, she can sin. You stand up. You have to dismantle this logic before it solidifies in the jury's mind. Objection, you shout. A spider weaves a web and waits. Is the spider a murderer? A cat crouches by a mouse hole. Is the cat plotting treason? This is not planning, my lord. This is hunting. It is the design of nature, not the malice of the devil. This brings us to a mainstream historical fact. The concept of mens rea, guilty mind. Medieval law was obsessed with the state of mind. If a man killed another man by accident, say, chopping wood and the axe head flew off, he might be pardoned. But if he lay in wait, get apens, it was a capital offense. Philippe is trying to upgrade the pig's charge from accidental homicide to premeditated murder by proving she hid behind a bush. Furthermore, Philippe continues, ignoring you. Look at her eyes. The witness Thomas said she cast the evil eye. Why? Because she hated the child. Perhaps the child threw a stone at her once. Perhaps she holds a grudge. We all know animals remember injuries. An elephant never forgets. A pig never forgives. Speculation, you cry. Now you are attributing complex emotions to a ham sandwich. Does she have a diary? Did she tell Thomas she held a grudge? The crowd laughs nervously. You are walking a fine line between defense and comedy. Then explain the cruelty. Philippe roars. She didn't just kill, she mangled. She defiled the face. That is not hunger, that is rage. You look at the pig. She is currently trying to lick a stain off the floor. She looks about as full of rage as a pillow. My lord, you say, lowering your voice to a whisper. Look at the accused. Right now. Look at her. The whole room turns to look at Porcus. She yawns, revealing a set of yellow teeth and a very large, wet tongue. She blinks slowly. Does this look like a mastermind? You ask. Does this look like a creature consumed by the fires of hatred? She is bored. She is hungry. She is probably wondering why we are all shouting. You turn to the judge. To convict for murder, you need a motive. What was her motive? Did she want the child's inheritance? Did she want to marry the child's wife? Did she have a political disagreement with the father? She wanted blood, Philippe shouts. Then she is a predator, not a criminal. You shout back. We execute criminals to punish them. We kill predators to stop them. There is a difference. If you hang her as a criminal, you are saying she is one of us. You are saying she is a citizen of Savigny who went bad. Do you really want to admit a pig into our citizenry? This leads to a niche philosophical paradox. The inclusion versus exclusion of animals. If you put an animal on trial, you are paradoxically elevating it. You are saying it is a member of the legal community, subject to its laws. By arguing against the trial, you are actually arguing for the exclusion of the pig from human society. You are saying she is just a thing. Destroy the thing. But don't dignify it with a verdict. Counselor, the judge interrupts. You argue she has no reason, but consider this. If a man is drunk and kills, he is still guilty, even if his reason was clouded. Is the pig not like a drunkard, slaves to their base appetites? A drunkard chose to drink, my lord. You counter. The pig did not choose to be a pig. God made her a pig. If you punish her for being a pig, you are questioning the Creator's design. The priest in the front row gasps, you are skating on thin theological ice again. But then, Philippe plays his ace card. My lord, Philippe says smoothly, the defense claims animals have no reason. But I have here a citation from the Holy Scriptures. Did not the ass of Balaam speak? Did not the serpent in Eden tempt Eve? If the devil can use a serpent to destroy humanity, can he not use a pig to destroy a family? The crowd murmurs agreement. The devil, they whisper. This brings us to a massive academic controversy. The demonic agency theory. Did medieval lawyers actually believe the animal itself was the criminal, or did they believe the animal was a vessel for a demon? Campa, the supernaturalists, argues that these trials were essentially exorcisms. The pig was just a puppet. The real defendant was Satan. By hanging the pig, they were hurting the devil. Camp B, the legalists, argues that the records don't support this. The indictments rarely mention demons. They talk about the pig's malice, the pig's act. They treat the animal as an autonomous bad actor, like a human psychopath. Philippe is blurring the lines. He is using the devil argument to scare. You are sitting on a hard wooden bench outside the judge's chambers. The sun has set completely now. The only light comes from a sputtering torch mounted on the stone wall, casting flickering shadows that look like dancing gallows. You are waiting, and in the legal world, waiting is where the hope dies. Philippe, the prosecutor, is pacing nearby, eating an apple with an annoying crunch. He looks confident. He knows he won the intent argument the moment the pig slid into the judge, but you know something he doesn't, or at least you hope for something he is ignoring. You are hoping that the town of Savigny is broke. The door to the chambers creaks open. Old Jean, the bailiff, slips out. He looks exhausted. He spots you and shuffles over, keeping his voice low. It's a war in there, counselor, Jean whispers. But not about the law, about the ledger. This brings us to a mainstream historical fact. The paper trail of death. One of the main reasons we know so much about these animal trials is not because of the legal transcripts, which are often lost, but because of the receipts. Medieval bureaucracy was obsessive about money. Every nail, every rope, every meal for the prisoner was recorded. We have surviving invoices from 1457 that list exactly how much it cost to kill a pig. And it was not cheap. What is the sticking point? You whisper back. Jean rolls his eyes. The executioner, the master of high works, from Falaise, he sent his rate card. And he wants 50 sous for the travel, 10 sous for the rope, and Jean pauses, shaking his head in disbelief. He demands a new pair of gloves. This leads to a niche, bizarre historical detail. The executioner's gloves. Executioners were professionals. They were also social pariahs. But they had standards. When executing a human, they touched the prisoner. But when executing an animal, especially one convicted of a vile murder, the executioner often claimed that touching the beast would defile his hands. He demanded a brand new pair of white gloves as part of his fee, so he wouldn't have to make skin-to-skin contact with the criminal pig. It was a union demand. No gloves. No hanging. The town council is furious, Jean continues. They are saying, why buy gloves? Just wash your hands, but the master is stubborn. He says if they don't pay for the gloves, he'll send his apprentice. And the apprentice, well, he is clumsy with the knot. It could get messy. You suppress a smile. This is it. This is your loophole. Jean, you say, urgently. Go back in there. Remind the judge that if they burn the pig, they don't need a rope, but burning requires wood, and wood is expensive this time of year. But if they banish the pig, that costs nothing. Jean blinks. Banishment. Tell them to just kick her out of the duchy. Free, 0 francs. No gloves required. Jean grins. You are a slippery one, counselor. He slips back into the room. You wait. You hold your breath. You are trying to save a life by appealing to the stinginess of local government. It is the most realistic legal strategy you have ever come up with. 10 minutes later, the bells toll, the door opens. The court will rise, Jean shouts. You rush back into the hall. The crowd is sleepy, but buzzes awake instantly. The judge ascends the dais. He looks grumpy. He clearly lost the argument about the gloves. We have reached a verdict, the judge announces, unrolling a scroll that is impressively long for a case involving a farm animal. Regarding the 6 piglets, the judge begins. You hold your breath. The court finds that although they were present at the scene and were stained with blood, there is no evidence they participated in the murder. Furthermore, their owner, Jehan, has abandoned them to the court. The judge pauses. The piglets are acquitted. They are hereby confiscated by the lord of the manor to be added to the royal sty. You exhale. You save the babies. Well, you saved them from the hangman. You probably didn't. T saved them from the butcher next Christmas. But that is a problem for another lawyer. Regarding the accused sow, Porcus, the judge continues. His voice drops an octave. The court finds the accused guilty of murder with malice aforethought. Your shoulders slump. The money defense failed. However, the judge says, looking at a piece of paper slipped to him by the treasurer. Due to the extreme nature of the crime and the logistical requirements of the high justice, is he going to say banishment? The court sentences the sow to be hanged by the hind legs until dead. The crowd cheers. You close your eyes. Hanging. The death of shame. This brings us to a massive academic controversy. The symbolism of the punishment. Why hang a pig? Why not just hit it with an axe? Campe, the anthropomorphists, argues that hanging is a human punishment. By hanging the pig, they are treating it as a fallen human. It is a ritual of equality in death. Camp B, the ritual purification school, argues that hanging does not spill blood, unlike beheading. In medieval folklore, the blood of a murderer was toxic. It could poison the earth. Hanging kept the bad blood inside the body. It was a way to contain the pollution. Camp C, the cynics, argues it was just cheaper than burning, despite the glove fee. Wood was really expensive. The sentence will be carried out tomorrow at dawn, the judge declares. In the public square, the master of high works has been summoned, and yes, he glares at the treasurer. His gloves have been approved. The gavel bangs. It sounds like a gunshot. You look at the pig. She is asleep in the dock. She missed her own sentencing. You feel a wave of exhaustion. You failed. You saved the piglets. But the mother is going to swing. Philippe walks past you. He doesn't gloat. He actually looks a bit solemn. You fought well, he says quietly. The exile argument was clever, but the mob needs a show. It is not a show, Philippe, you snap. It is a life. It is bacon, counselor, he corrects you. It was always bacon. We just made it expensive bacon. He walks away. You gather your papers. You have one last duty. You have to visit the client. You have to explain to a pig that her appeal has been denied. And you have to watch the execution. It is required by law. The defense counsel must witness the penalty to ensure proper procedure. You walk out of the hall. The square is dark, but the gallows are silhouetted against the moon. It stands there like a skeleton. Tomorrow, that wooden frame will be the center of the universe for the village of Savigny. And you will be standing in the front row, wearing your best robe, trying not to cry over a pig. You are sitting in the Broken Wheel Tavern, staring into a cup of wine that tastes suspiciously like vinegar and regret. The trial is over. The verdict is in. The pig dies at dawn. But the bureaucracy is just getting started. Across the table sits a man dressed entirely in black leather, smelling faintly of old blood and expensive cologne. This is Master Valet, the executor of high justice, Maître des Hautes Œuvres, who has just arrived from Falaise. He does not look like a monster. He looks like a weary accountant who happens to kill things for a living. He pushes a piece of paper across the sticky table. The invoice, Counselor, he says smoothly, for the town council, but since you are the legal representative, you should review it. You pick up the slip. It is an itemized list of death. This brings us to a mainstream historical fact, the receipt of Savigny. We know the exact details of this case because the financial records survived. The total cost of executing this pig was 10 sous and 10 deniers. To put that in perspective, that is roughly the monthly wage of a skilled craftsman. The village of Savigny is essentially bankrupting itself to hang a farm animal. You read the items aloud, your voice trembling with disbelief. Item for the transport of the prisoner from the jail to the square, 6 sous. You are charging for walking her, you ask. She refuses to walk, the executioner replies, sipping his wine. We need a cart, a sturdy one, and a horse to pull it. It is the cart of shame, Charrette de la Honte, dignity costs money, Counselor. You continue reading. Item for the rope, new and greased, 2 sous. Item for the erecting of the gibbet, 1 sou, and then there it is. The item that caused the argument in the judge's chambers. Item for a pair of new white gloves, 2 deniers. You look at his hands. They are large, calloused, and currently wrapping around a chicken leg. Are the gloves really necessary, Master Valet? You ask. It is a pig. You touch pork every time you eat dinner. The executioner stops chewing. He looks at you with cold, dead eyes. I do not touch criminals with my bare hands, Counselor. It is a matter of hygiene, spiritual hygiene. The touch of a murderer, man or beast, taints the soul. The gloves are non-negotiable, unless you want to tie the knot yourself. You recoil. No. Thank you. This leads to a niche, fascinating social reality, the untouchable professional. Executioners in the Middle Ages were wealthy but socially radioactive. They were often forced to live outside the city walls. They couldn't touch food in the market. They had to point at what they wanted with a wand. No one would marry into their families, except other executioner families. By demanding gloves, Master Valet is being a diva. He is maintaining the thin barrier that separates him from the pollution of his job. He is performing a ritual cleansing before the act. You sign the invoice. The town will pay. They have no choice. There is one more thing, the executioner adds, wiping grease from his lip. The body. What about it? Usually I get the clothes of the victim as a perk, but the breeches, they are stretched and stained. I don't want them. I am sure the pig will be relieved, you mutter. And the meat, he continues. Usually, the executioner gets the body. You freeze. You are going to eat her. God, no, he looks horrified. She is a felon. Her flesh is corrupted. It would be cannibalism, spiritually speaking. No, she must be buried. In consecrated ground. Number in the dumping ground. But I charge for the digging. Of course you do, you sigh. You leave the tavern. The executioner has his money. The judge has his verdict. The village has its spectacle. Everyone is satisfied, except you. You decide to make one last visit to the prison. You tell yourself it is to inform the client. But really, it is because you feel like she is the only sane creature left in Savigny. You enter the cell. It is dark, but it is not silent. HR shach. A deep, rhythmic, rumbling sound fills the small stone room. The pig is sleeping, and she is snoring loudly. You stand there, holding your candle, watching her flanks rise and fall. She is completely oblivious. She doesn't know about the invoice. She doesn't know about the white gloves. She doesn't know that a man in leather is currently finishing a chicken leg before he comes to kill her. This brings us to the snoring defense, which you tried to use in your mind, but never got to say. In medieval theology, the sleep of the just was a real concept. A guilty conscience keeps you awake. A murderer tosses and turns. But this pig, she is sleeping like a baby. If she had a conscience, she would be pacing. If she had malice aforethought, she would be plotting an escape. Her snoring is the ultimate proof of her innocence. It is the sound of a creature that lives entirely in the present tense. You really don't take care, do you? You whisper. She twitches her ear in her sleep. Maybe she is dreaming of truffles, or mud, or that unfortunate child. You realize that the intent you argued about in court was never hers. It was ours. We projected our own morality onto a blank screen of bacon. This leads to a massive academic controversy. The theater of anxiety theory. Why go through all this expense? Why the gloves, the cart, the lawyer fees? Historians like Esther Cohen argue that the trial wasn't for the pig. It was for the humans. The Middle Ages were a time of chaos. Plague, war, famine. Nature was terrifying and unpredictable. By putting a pig through a legal trial, humans were saying, we are in control. Even the beasts obey our laws. It was a comforting lie. We spent 10 sous and 10 deniers to pretend that the world makes sense. You reach through the bars and touch her snout. It is warm and dry. Sleep well, Porcus, you say. You are the only one getting any rest tonight. You walk back out into the night. The village is quiet, but you know no one is sleeping. They are waiting for the dawn. They are waiting for the show. You go back to your attic. You lay out your best robe, the one with the fewest patches. Tomorrow, you have to stand on the scaffold. You have to look solemn. You have to play your part in the final act. You check your own gloves. They are stained with ink and mud. You wish you had a new pair. Not because you are afraid of pollution, but because you don't want to feel the rope when they hand it to you to inspect. The clock tower strikes 3. 3 hours left. The pig snores on. The executioner sharpens his knife, just in case the rope fails and you stare at the ceiling, wondering if, in 100 years, anyone will believe this actually happened. The sun has not yet risen, but the sky is a bruised purple. The color of a healing wound. The square of Savigny is packed. It seems no one in the village slept. They were too busy securing a good spot near the front. You stand at the base of the scaffold. You are wearing your best robe, though it feels heavy and suffocating in the morning mist. Beside you stands Philippe, the prosecutor, looking annoyingly fresh, and in the center of the attention, sitting in the cart of shame, drawn by a very nervous old horse, is your client. Porcus. She is still wearing the waistcoat and breeches, though they are now stained with straw and muck. She looks groggy. She blinks at the torchlight. This is the moment of the amende honorable, the formal reading of the crimes before the sentence is carried out. It is the legal system's way of ensuring that everyone, including the pig, knows exactly why this is happening. The court clerk steps forward. He unrolls a scroll that is comically long. It trails onto the cobblestones. He clears his throat. Hear ye, the clerk bellows. We stand here to witness the final judgment upon the prisoner, a sow of Savigny, for the crimes of murder, mayhem, and the disturbing of the king's peace. He begins to read the details. And I mean details. Medieval law was nothing if not specific. Item: that on the Tuesday before Easter, the accused did enter the house. Item: that the accused did, with teeth and malice, approach the cradle. Item: that the accused did inflict wounds upon the left arm, measuring 3 inches. It is gruesome. It is tragic. The crowd is silent, hanging on every word. The mother of the victim is sobbing quietly in the front row. The atmosphere is heavy with the weight of sin and retribution. But you are watching the pig. She is swaying slightly. Her head is drooping, the rhythmic drone of the clerk's voice seems to be having an effect on her. You realize what is about to happen. You try to nudge the cart. Wake up, you hiss, look remorseful. But it's too late, just as the clerk reaches the climax of the indictment, and thus did savagely and wickedly destroy the life of a Christian soul. A sound cuts through the square. Snoo-a-woo, oort, peft. It is loud. It is wet. It is undeniably a snore. The pig has fallen asleep. In the middle of her own death sentence, the clerk stops reading. The crowd freezes. The executioner, who was testing the knot, pauses. The silence is absolute, broken only by the pig's rhythmic breathing. Hun, sh, nung, shesh. This is your moment. It is the final, desperate improvisation of a lawyer with nothing left to lose. You step forward. You point at the sleeping defendant. Look, you shout, your voice cracking. Look at the monster. Look at the mastermind. You turn to the judge, who is watching from the balcony of the hall. My lord. The prosecution claims she acted with malice, with premeditation. But look at her. Does a murderer sleep through the reading of their crimes? Does a creature with a guilty conscience nap at the foot of the gallows? You gesture wildly at the snoring pig. This is not the sleep of the wicked. This is the sleep of the oblivious. She doesn't know why she is here. She doesn't know what you are saying. You are reading Latin and French to a creature who speaks only turnip. The crowd shifts. You see a few people chuckle. The tension of the ritual is breaking. The absurdity is leaking through. If she has no understanding of the crime, you bellow, she can have no guilt. You are about to hang a sleepwalker. You are about to execute a piece of furniture. For a second, just a second, you think you have them. You see doubt in the judge. Sighs, you see the executioner lower the rope. The snore has done what your logic could. It has proven that the defendant is biologically incapable of caring about human justice. But then, Philippe steps in. He doesn't, he shouts. He walks up to the cart and kicks the wheel. Bang! The pig wakes up with a start. She squeals, a loud, angry, very unsleepy sound. She snaps at Philippe's robe. She is awake now, Philippe announces to the crowd. And she is violent. See how she attacks the crown. Representative, her sleep was a ruse, a devilish trick to lower our guard. The crowd roars in agreement. A trick, your shoulders slump, you lost. The pig's nap was the best defense you had, and her wake-up call was the final nail in the coffin. The clerk clears his throat, looking annoyed at the interruption. If there are no further outbursts, he glares at you. I shall proceed to the reading of the sentence. You step back into the shadows. You look at the pig. She is awake now, looking around for the source of the noise, completely unaware that her nap just made legal history. You realize that you will be telling the story for the rest of your life. The day you argued the snoring defense, and the day it almost worked. The sun has fully risen now, bathing the village square of Savigny in a stark, unforgiving light. The comedy of the snoring pig has faded, replaced by the crushing weight of the inevitable. The crowd has stopped laughing. They are shifting on their feet, waiting for the words that will turn a living creature into a corpse. Judge Filiart stands up. He adjusts his robes. He looks like a man who believes he is doing God's work, which makes him terrifying. He holds the final judgment in his hands, a document that is 3 pages long, filled with dense legal jargon, written by a scribe who probably charged by the word. In the name of the king, the judge intones, his voice echoing off the stone walls of the church, and in the name of high justice. The square goes deadly silent. Even the wind seems to hold its breath. We, the judges of the bailiwick of Falaise, having heard the evidence, and having considered the defense, He glances at you, and you feel a pang of failure. Do hereby find the accused, Porcus, guilty on all counts. This brings us to a mainstream historical fact, the lex talionis, law of retaliation. Medieval justice was biblical. Eye for an eye, tooth for tooth. This applied to animals too. The sentence wasn't just death. It was a reenactment of the crime. If the pig bit the child's arm, the pig's arm foreleg had to be mutilated. If the pig bit the pig's face had to be slashed. The punishment had to mirror the sin to balance the cosmic scales. It is the sentence of this court, the judge reads, that the prisoner be taken from this cart, that she be inflicted with a wound upon the head and upon the foreleg, mirroring the wounds of the victim. The crowd nods. This makes sense to them. It is symmetry. And then, the judge continues, she shall be hoisted by the hind legs upon the gibbet. Wait, hind legs, this leads to a niche. Bizarre execution detail, the inverted hanging. Human criminals were hanged by the neck. It was usually quick. The neck broke. But pigs and sometimes wolves or Jewish people in medieval anti-Semitic tradition were often hanged upside down. Why? Practicality partly. A pig's neck is thick and muscular. A noose might just slip off or fail to strangle. But symbolically, it was an inversion. It showed that the world was upside down. It was a sign of total disgrace. It prolonged the death. It was a bad death. Mala mors, and there she shall remain. The judge drones on, until her soul, nay, until her life, departs from her body, and her body shall be left to rot as a warning to all. To all what? You mutter under your breath. To all other pigs. Actually, yes. The judge looks up from the parchment. He gestures to the bailiffs. Ensure that the local farmers have brought their swine to the square. You turn around. You hadn't noticed it before because of the crowd. But at the edge of the square, there is a designated pen. Inside are 20 or 30 domestic pigs. They are grunting, rooting in the dirt, completely unaware of the drama. Their owners are standing next to them, holding sticks. This brings us to a massive academic controversy. The deterrence for animals theory. Did medieval people really believe that watching an execution would teach other animals a lesson? Camp of the Symbolists argues. No, it was symbolic. It was a message to the owners. Control your beasts, or this happens to you. The pigs were just props. Camp B, the literalists argues. Yes, they believed it. There are records of judges explicitly ordering fathers to bring their children to executions to learn. The logic extended to animals. If a pig sees a pig die, it will be scared straight. It implies a belief in a universal language of violence that transcends species. Let the lesson begin, the judge proclaims. He hands the death warrant to the clerk, who hands it to the executioner. Master Valet, the man in black leather, steps forward. He pulls on his brand new, expensive white gloves. He snaps the leather tight around his wrists. He looks like a surgeon preparing for an operation or a magician about to perform a trick. He walks to the cart. The pig, Porcus, is awake now. She smells the fear in the air. She smells the other pigs. She lets out a low, nervous grunt. You feel a sudden, irrational urge to jump the barrier, to run to the cart and cut the ropes, to shout, she is just a pig, she doesn't know. But you don't. You are a lawyer. You are an officer of the court. You validated this process by participating in it. If you stop it now, you aren't saving the pig. You are destroying the law. So you stand there. You clutch your robe. You watch as Master Valet opens the gate of the cart of shame. He doesn't drag her out roughly. He is a professional. He uses a small prod. The pig steps down onto the cobblestones. Her canvas breeches are slipping down. Her white shirt is torn. She looks small, without the cart, without the dock. She is just a farm animal standing in a square. The executioner produces a knife. He has to perform the mirror wounds first. He moves fast, slash, the pig squeals. A sharp, shocked sound. Blood appears on her head and leg. The crowd exhales. The debt is paid. The symmetry is restored. Now comes the rope. Master Valet ties a heavy rope around her hind legs. He signals to his assistant. The assistant turns the winch. Creak, the pig is lifted off the ground. She thrashes. Her shirt falls over her head, blinding her. She is dangling upside down, a pendulum of heavy flesh. She screams. It is the same scream she made in the cell, the same scream she made in the court. It is the scream of a creature that wants to live. The other pigs in the pen go silent. They stop rooting. They stare at the swinging shape. Are they learning? Are they contemplating the consequences of murder? Or are they just terrified by the smell of fresh blood and the sound of distress? You look at the judge. He is watching with a grim satisfaction. He believes he has restored order. He believes the universe is balanced again. You look at the executioner. He is watching the rope, calculating his fee. You look at the pig. She is slowing down. The thrashing is getting weaker. The silence returns to the square. But it is not a peaceful silence. It is a heavy, suffocating silence. It is the silence of a question that no one wants to answer. Did this actually solve anything? The judge rolls up his scroll. Justice is served, he announces. You look down at your hands. They are trembling. You realize that you have just witnessed the most expensive, elaborate, and logical act of insanity in human history. And the worst part, you helped pay for the gloves. The rope stops creaking. The winch is locked. The heavy, inverted form of Porcus, the Sceau of Savigny, hangs motionless in the morning air. She is dead. The lesson has been taught. You stand there, watching the body sway slightly in the wind. The canvas breeches, once so ridiculous, now look tragic. They droop around her stiffening legs. The white shirt, stained with the blood of the mirror wounds, flutters over her face like a shroud. From a distance, if you squint, she doesn't look like a pig anymore. She looks like a short, stout man who met a terrible end. And that, you realize, was the point all along. The executioner, Master Valet, wipes his blade on a rag. He peels off his pristine white gloves, now slightly speckled with red, and tucks them into his belt. He looks satisfied. He has performed a clean job. No ropes broke, no crowds rioted. He has earned his 50 sous, but the show isn't over. The judge gestures to the pen of witness pigs. Let them see, he commands. Let them smell the consequence of sin. The herders poke the 20 or so domestic pigs, driving them closer to the gibbet. The pigs grunt. They sniff the air, they smell the blood of their kin. They do not look reflective. They do not look like they are contemplating the 10 Commandments. They look hungry. One of them tries to eat a dropped piece of the executioner's rope. This brings us to a mainstream historical reality, the theater of the scaffold. As the philosopher Michel Foucault would later describe, though he was talking about humans, public execution was a political ritual. It was the inscription of power onto the body of the criminal. By forcing the village pigs to watch, the court was attempting to project its power beyond the species barrier. They were trying to colonize the animal kingdom with human law. It is the ultimate act of bureaucratic arrogance, believing that a writ of execution can change the behavior of a barnyard. You watch a farmer whisper to his boar, "See that? That is what happens when you bite." The boar sneezes. This leads to a massive academic controversy, the carnivalesque debate. Was this scene terrifying, or was it hilarious? Campa, the Mikhail Bakhtin school, argues that this was carnival. It was a world turned upside down. Dressing a pig in pants and hanging it is inherently funny. It is a parody of official justice. The crowd laughs to release tension. It mocks the authorities even as they exercise power. Camp B, the terror school, argues that for the medieval peasant, there was no joke here. The boundary between human and animal was porous. If a pig could be hanged like a man could be butchered like a pig. The sight was deeply unsettling, reinforcing a world of magical fear where anything could happen. You look at the faces in the crowd. Some are laughing, pointing at the pig's pants. Others are crossing themselves, looking terrified. It is both. It is a horror show and a comedy sketch performed on the same stage. The spectacle is concluded. The judge announces, "The body shall remain on the gibbet until it rots to bone. Let no man cut it down, under penalty of the lash." The crowd begins to disperse. They are chatting, energized by the violence. They are heading to the taverns. Execution days are effectively holidays. The economy of the village, which paused for the hanging, is now roaring back to life. The baker is selling pies. The ale is flowing. "Counselor," a voice says behind you. It is the town treasurer. He holds a small pouch. "Your fee," he says, handing it to you, "minus the cost of the straw, the turnips, and the pants." You take the pouch. It is light, very light. You do the mental math. After deducting the expenses of keeping the pig in luxury and dressing her in velvet-painted canvas, you have made almost nothing. You have essentially worked for free to defend a ham sandwich. "There is a banquet at the town hall," the treasurer adds. "Roast pork, you are invited." You stare at him. "Roast pork? Not her," he clarifies quickly, pointing at the hanging sow. "She is inedible, felon." "Smeat? No, we slaughtered a good Christian pig for the feast, to celebrate the restoration of order." The irony hits you like a physical blow. They hanged one pig for murder, and now they are going to murder another pig to celebrate the hanging. The line between criminal and dinner is drawn not by biology, but by a piece of parchment signed by a judge. "I think I've lost my appetite," you say. You walk away from the square. You pass the witness pigs, being driven back to their farms. They trot along happily, tails curling. They survive another day. Not because they are innocent, but because they haven't been caught yet. You reach the edge of the village. You look back. The silhouette of Porcus is stark against the midday sun. She is swinging gently. She is a warning, but a warning to whom? To the pigs. They don't care. To the humans, maybe. Or maybe she is just a warning to young lawyers. Don't take the cases that involve livestock. You feel a heavy, cynical exhaustion settling into your bones. You have seen the machinery of justice up close. You have seen the gears turn, the ink flow, and the money change hands. And you realize that the machine doesn't care what it grinds, man, woman, or beast, as long as the paperwork is in order. You need to leave Savigny. You need to go back to Paris. You need to find a boring case about a property line or a will. But as you walk down the muddy road, leaving the gallows behind, you know you will never forget her. The sow who slept through her own death sentence. The sow who wore pants better than the executioner. This leads to a niche, lasting legacy. The gibbet of Montfaucon. In Paris, the great gallows of Montfaucon displayed the bodies of executed criminals. There are records suggesting that occasionally alongside the thieves and traitors, the shriveled, hanging bodies of wolves and pigs could be seen. Your client is now part of that grim gallery. She has joined the criminal underworld. You tighten your cloak. It is starting to rain again. The Middle Ages washes away the blood, but it keeps the records. You have the receipts. You have the memories. And somewhere, deep in your pocket, you have a single, coarse white hair you plucked from her coat before the end. A souvenir of the client who could pay, but who taught you everything about the madness of men. You walk on. The road is long, and you have a feeling that history is going to remember this day much longer than you will. Years have passed. The mud of Savigny has dried and turned to dust, and the rain has washed away the blood from the cobblestones 1,000 times over. You are no longer the hungry, desperate rookie lawyer in a patched robe. You are Montreal Counsel, a man of substance, with gray in your beard and a velvet purse that is never empty. You find yourself traveling through Normandy again, perhaps on your way to a case in Rouen. You stop in the town of Falaise, the seat of the local bailiwick. You decide to step into the Church of the Holy Trinity, to escape the midday heat, and perhaps light a candle for old time's sake. You walk through the cool stone nave. The smell of frankincense is soothing. You look up at the walls, expecting to see the usual array of saints, martyrs, and angels, but in the chapel of the Virgin, high on the plaster wall, you see something that makes you stop dead in your tracks. It is a fresco, a painting, but it is not the Last Supper. It is not the Nativity. It is the trial. There, painted in vivid ochre and vermilion, is the scene you lived through. There is the judge on his high bench. There is the executioner in his black leather. There is the crowd of gawking peasants. And there, center stage, is your client. The pig, the artist has painted her wearing the waistcoat and the breeches. He has captured the white gloves. He has even painted the look of confusion on her snout. This brings us to a mainstream historical fact, the Falaise fresco. For centuries, a real fresco depicting the execution of a sow, specifically the 1386 trial, which set the precedent for your case, adorned the wall of the Church of the Holy Trinity in Falaise. It was a tourist attraction. It was considered a moral lesson, as valid as any scripture. You stare at it. The artist has given the pig a strange human-like dignity. She looks less like a barnyard animal and more like a martyr. This leads to a niche, tragic detail. The whitewash. You are seeing this fresco in its prime, but if you were to come back in 400 years, in the 19th century, you wouldn't find it. Why? Because in 1820, the church authorities painted it over. During the Enlightenment and the Age of Reason, the church and the state became deeply embarrassed by their medieval past. They could believe their ancestors were stupid enough to try a pig. They viewed it as a shameful superstition, so they engaged in historical vandalism. They erased the pig to save their own dignity. The fresco exists today only in sketches made by antiquarians before the whitewash brushes came out. But standing here in the 15th century, the painting is bright and fresh. You realize the ultimate irony. You worried about the verdict. You worried about the fee. You worried about the execution. But the pig won. She achieved the one thing every human in this church craves: immortality. Generations of children will look up at this wall and ask, "Mommy, why is that pig wearing pants?" And the story will be told. The judge is forgotten, you are forgotten, but the pig in the waistcoat lives forever. This brings us to the final academic controversy: the humanity of the beast. Did we elevate the pig, or did we lower ourselves? Campe argues that by painting the pig in church, we admitted that animals are part of our spiritual community. We acknowledged a kinship. Campe argues that this is the ultimate act of human arrogance, forcing an animal to be a prop in our moral play. Even in death. You light your candle, you place it not before a saint, but beneath the painting of the sow. You think about the intent. You think about the soul. You realize that the law is just a story we tell ourselves to make the chaos of the world feel organized. We build courtrooms. We write Latin. We sew pants for pigs. All to pretend that we are in control of nature. But nature doesn't care. The pig didn't care. She just wanted a turnip. You walk out of the church. The sun is shining. The world is noisy and alive. You are done with animal trials. You will stick to land disputes and wills. Humans are greedy and lying, but at least they don't sleep through their own defense. You climb onto your horse. You take one last look at the village. The gallows are empty now. The square is full of market stalls selling cheese and linen. Life goes on, but in the back of your mind, you can still hear it. The sound of a gavel banging, the sound of a rope creaking, and the sound of a very loud, very indifferent snore. The final adjournment, and so the court is dismissed. The heavy oak doors have swung shut, sealing the noise and the madness of the Middle Ages inside the dusty books of history. You can take off your robe now, the itchy wool, the stiff collar, the weight of the legal arguments. Let them all drop to the floor. You don't have to argue anymore. You don't have to find a loophole in the Latin text. You don't have to worry about the cost of gloves or the price of a rope. Imagine you are back in a quiet, warm library. It is raining outside, a gentle, rhythmic drumming on the roof, washing away the mud of the village square. The air smells of old paper and lavender. The candle flame is steady and golden. The pig is safe now, not in a cell, but in the memory of the world, sleeping peacefully in a field of clover, far away from judges and executioners. The piglets are sleeping in the straw. The village is silent. You are safe. The logic of the law has faded into the logic of dreams. There are no more verdicts to wait for. There is only the soft, heavy comfort of rest. Let the gavel fall one last time, not with a bang, but with a whisper. Case closed. Sleep. The story ends here. Good night.